The flatline tone pierced my ears as our baby's heart stopped beating. In that moment of crushing grief, I saw my wife Chloe's phone. Text messages to her ex-lover Liam sent during our child's final heartbeats. 6 years together meant nothing. While our son died, she was planning her escape. I didn't scream or break down. Instead, cold clarity replaced my anguish. She betrayed us in our darkest hour, so I would destroy both their lives with patient, meticulous revenge. The flatline tone pierced my ears as our baby's heart stopped beating. In that moment of crushing grief, I saw my wife Chloe's phone. Text. Messages to her ex-lover Liam sent during our child's final heartbeats. 6 years together meant nothing. While our son died, she was planning her escape. I didn't scream or break down. Instead, cold clarity replaced my anguish. She betrayed us in our darkest hour, so I would destroy both their lives with patient, meticulous revenge. The doctors called it placental abruption. Severe, unexpected, catastrophic. 1 minute we were having dinner. The next, Chloe was screaming, blood soaking through her clothes. The rush to the hospital felt like drowning. Now, I stood frozen, watching medical staff work frantically around her. Monitors shrieked warnings that our son's heartbeat was fading. I was shoved aside as they prepped for emergency surgery. That's when I saw her phone on the side table, screen lit up with incoming messages. Looking back, I should have seen it coming when I caught her staring at Liam across the room at our alumni gala 3 months earlier. That wasn't just recognition in her eyes. It was hunger. I scrolled through their conversation as doctors shouted orders around me. "I can't do this anymore," she'd written exactly 2 minutes before our son's heart monitor flatlined. "After it's over, we need to talk about us." The nurse touched my shoulder, asking if I wanted to hold my stillborn son. I slid the phone back. Onto the table, my hand surprisingly steady. I nodded, taking my child's tiny body wrapped in hospital-issue blankets. "I'm so sorry," the nurse whispered. I cradled my son against my chest, his perfect fingers, his mouth shaped like mine. Everything we'd planned for him, gone. Chloe slept sedated after the procedure. I sat beside her bed, memorizing the peaceful expression on her face. She had no idea what I'd seen, no idea that in those moments of crisis, I'd glimpsed something I could never unsee. I didn't know then that grief could crystallize into something harder than diamond, something that could cut through the rest of my life with surgical precision. "I'll take care of everything," I whispered, stroking her hair. The nurse mistook my calm for shock. That night she woke disoriented. The realization hit her all over again. She clutched at me, sobs racking her body. I held her, my touch gentle, my eyes dry. "Our baby," she kept repeating. "Our baby." I never mentioned the texts, never confronted her. Instead, I watched as she checked her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I listened as she took calls in our bathroom with the shower running. I knew what I was becoming. Something cold, something dangerous. But there was strange comfort in the transformation. 3 days later, at home, I found her crying over a onesie we'd bought together. She crumpled against me, seeking comfort. I gave it to her, my arms around her, feeling like the perfect disguise. "I feel so alone," she whispered. I stroked her hair. "You're not alone. I'm right here." The lie tasted clean on my tongue. I remember thinking no one would recognize who I was becoming. The man everyone knew, kind, forgiving Mark, had died in that hospital room alongside our son. I started keeping notes. Every suspicious call, every unexplained absence, every moment she thought she was being subtle. I built a case like a prosecutor preparing for trial. At night, I accessed her cloud storage while she slept. Backed up text messages revealed the full scope. Their affair had rekindled months ago, right after that alumni event. They'd met at hotels while I worked late. They'd texted constantly. I hadn't noticed how much she'd removed herself from our life even before the pregnancy went wrong. Then I found something that broke me all over again. Messages from when she first learned she was pregnant. Discussions about termination. "It complicates everything," she'd written to him. Our child had been an inconvenience to their plans. I went through our normal routines mechanically. I made her favorite meals. I attended grief counseling sessions where she talked about feeling disconnected during the pregnancy. The therapist nodded sympathetically, if he only knew. When friends visited, I played the supportive husband. I brought her tea when she was too distraught to come downstairs. I fielded their concerned calls, assuring them Chloe was processing her grief. All the while, I researched Liam Franklin, Harvard Business School, investment firm with offices downtown, married to Patricia, who ran a children's literacy charity, past rumors of inappropriate relationships with clients, financial troubles hidden beneath designer suits and charity galas, a reputation built on quicksand. So many vulnerabilities I could exploit. My first move was subtle. I left our ultrasound photo on the kitchen counter, dated the exact time she was texting him. I watched her face drain of color when she saw it, her hands trembling as she slid it into a drawer. That night she had a panic attack. I held her, whispering comfort, taking precise mental notes of her reactions. "I keep thinking about what happened," she gasped between sobs. "I know," I said. "I do too. Every detail." Her eyes found mine, searching for hidden meaning. I kept my expression soft, concerned, revealing nothing. I began laying groundwork with our friends. Casual mentions of Chloe's old college flame reaching out so supportively. I'd watch her freeze mid-conversation, terror flickering behind her eyes. I remember thinking how strange it was to sleep beside someone you're systematically destroying, to kiss them goodnight while planning their downfall. But each night as I lay awake beside her, I remembered our son's tiny fingers. The future stolen from him, the betrayal that occurred in his final moments, and I knew exactly what needed to be done. For weeks, I became the perfect grieving partner. I held Chloe through nightmares, attended therapy sessions where she talked about feeling disconnected during the pregnancy. I nodded sympathetically. The therapist praised my support. Behind the mask, I was building my case. I installed recovery software on our shared computer while Chloe slept. She thought deleting messages kept her secrets safe. She was wrong. I tracked every late-night call, every unexplained absence, every password change, every deleted conversation restored. My spreadsheet grew, methodical and damning. I remember feeling oddly calm during those weeks, like I'd stepped outside my own body. The Mark everyone knew would have confronted her immediately, demanded explanations, broken down. But I was someone else now. Chloe started going back to work part-time at her nonprofit. I encouraged it, praised her strength. "It's good to keep busy," I told her, kissing her forehead. She looked relieved at my understanding. Of course she wanted to return to work. Liam's investment firm managed their endowment. Their affair could continue under the guise of professional meetings. I started taking long runs every morning, giving her space to make calls she thought I wouldn't know about. My fitness tracker recorded my routes, my alibi building alongside my evidence. When she mentioned a workplace fundraising meeting one evening, I smiled supportively. "You should go. It's important." I tracked her location to a downtown hotel. I didn't confront her. Instead, I took photos from the lobby, documenting the time, storing everything in an encrypted folder labeled insurance policy. I thought often about our first date 6 years ago, how she'd laughed at my terrible jokes, how certain I'd been that I'd found someone genuine. My research into Liam Franklin grew more detailed. His investment firm operated in ethical gray areas, the kind that remained legal through careful documentation and strategic relationships. His marriage to Patricia was his second. His first ended after multiple infidelities. I discovered financial discrepancies in his company reports. Nothing criminal, but questionable enough to damage reputation if highlighted properly. The firm had recently taken on substantial debt for expansion. They were vulnerable. Most interesting was Patricia Franklin herself, Yale-educated attorney who left practice to run her literacy foundation. She'd stayed with Liam after previous scandals, prioritizing their social standing. She wasn't someone who would tolerate public humiliation. Each night, lying beside Chloe, I refined my plan. Not just punishment, but complete dismantling. Everything methodical, everything deniable. I remember watching Chloe sleep, wondering if she dreamed of him, if she regretted our child, if she ever truly loved me. My first calculated move beyond surveillance came 3 weeks after the funeral. I accidentally left our baby's ultrasound photo on the kitchen counter, time-stamped exactly when she'd been texting Liam from the hospital. When she saw it, her coffee mug slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Her eyes met mine, searching for accusation. "Are you okay?" I asked, all concern. "Just clumsy," she whispered. That night she had a panic attack, gasping for air. I held her, stroking her hair. "Maybe we should talk more about what happened that day," I suggested gently. Her whole body tensed. "I can't. Not yet." Another piece of evidence in my mental file. I knew I was becoming someone dangerous. Someone capable of tremendous patience and calculated cruelty. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered our son's tiny hand, his perfect fingers that would never grasp mine. Next came the memorial items strategically placed throughout our home. A custom frame with his name and birthday in the hallway, a small blue teddy bear on the bookshelf, a garden stone for the backyard, each item positioned where Chloe would encounter it unexpectedly. Each one dated or engraved with the exact day and time of our loss. I watched her grow increasingly anxious, jumping at sounds, checking her phone constantly. The facade of her grief began showing cracks as real panic took hold. I remember thinking how interesting it was to witness someone crumbling from the inside, how the human mind can only maintain so many contradictions before something breaks. At the 1-month mark, I suggested dinner with our closest friends, Sarah and Michael. "It might help to be social again," I said. Chloe agreed too quickly. She was desperate for normalcy. During dinner, I strategically mentioned how Liam had reached out so supportively during our tragedy. Sarah looked confused. "Liam from college? You never mentioned he contacted you," she said to Chloe. "Oh, they've been in touch for months," I replied casually. "Right, sweetheart?" The color drained from Chloe's face. "Just occasionally," she stammered. I watched Sarah's expression shift subtly, the first thread of Chloe's social fabric beginning to unravel. Later that week, I found a donation form for Patricia Franklin's Literacy Foundation. I filled it out, making a substantial contribution in our baby's memory, specifically mentioning the difficult hours of March 15th, the date of our loss. When Patricia called to thank us personally, I answered, putting her on speakerphone while Chloe frantically gestured for me not to. "Your husband was so supportive during that exact time," I told her warmly, constantly messaging Chloe while we were in the hospital. The silence on the phone was devastating. Patricia's thank you turned clipped and formal. Chloe left the room, retching in the bathroom. When she returned, eyes red, I was still on the phone, discussing charity board positions with Patricia. "She's invited us to their summer gala," I told Chloe after hanging up. "Isn't that nice?" The look of sheer terror on her face was answer enough. I remember wondering if she would break down and confess, but she underestimated my patience, my capacity for the long game. My next move targeted Liam directly. Through professional contacts, I arranged to meet his firm's biggest client at a business lunch. The conversation naturally turned to investment strategies. "I've heard interesting things about Franklin Partners' billing practices," I mentioned, casually. Just enough concern in my voice to plant the seed. 2 days later, news broke that the client had requested an audit of Franklin Partners. Liam's carefully constructed professional reputation showed its first crack. When Chloe saw the business news alert on her phone, she dropped it like it had burned her. I picked it up, glancing at the screen. "Isn't that your old college friend's company?" I asked innocently. "Hope everything's okay." That night she received 3 missed calls from Liam. She took the 4th in our bathroom, shower running. I recorded every word through the device I'd hidden weeks earlier. "You need to be careful," she whispered to him. "I think he knows something." I'd become someone unrecognizable even to myself, someone capable of cold, methodical revenge, someone who could smile at the person who destroyed their family while systematically dismantling their life. But with each successful move, each new piece of pressure applied, I felt something like peace taking root, not happiness. Something darker, but no less sustaining. Justice was coming, and I was its architect. I began seeding doubt among our friends with surgical precision. At dinner with our closest couple friends, I innocently mentioned how Chloe's old college flame reached out so supportively during our tragedy. I watched her eyes widen in panic. "You never mentioned Liam contacted you," our friend Sarah said, confused. "Oh, they've been in touch for months," I replied calmly. "Right, sweetheart?" The first thread of her social fabric began to unravel. Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly, reassessing everything she thought she knew about Chloe's grief. Later that week, Sarah called me directly. "Is everything okay with you two? Chloe seems off." I sighed heavily. "She's struggling more than she lets on. The grief counselor says it's normal." I paused, then added, "Sometimes I wonder if there's something she's not telling me, something making her guilt worse." Sarah's silence told me the seed was planted. I knew then that my campaign was working. Each careful comment, each strategic revelation was isolating Chloe exactly as planned. My anonymous tip to Liam's biggest client about his fraudulent billing practices resulted in an official audit. His firm's reputation began to crack. Stock prices dipped. Industry blogs questioned his leadership. When Liam tried to meet Chloe for comfort at a downtown cafe, I ensured 3 mutual friends accidentally saw them. Their concerned texts reached me within the hour. "Is Chloe okay?" one wrote. "She seemed intense with Liam Franklin at Westside Cafe." I replied with careful ambiguity. "Thanks for letting me know. We're both handling grief differently." The text was forwarded, screenshots shared. The whispers began. I remember watching Chloe's face when she checked her phone and found fewer and fewer messages from friends, the slow realization that people were pulling away. She tried harder with me, desperate for connection, cooking elaborate dinners, suggesting weekend getaways, initiating intimacy. I politely declined, citing emotional rawness from our loss. Each rejection pushed her closer to the edge. Each smile I offered contained less warmth. I arranged a donation, in our baby's name, to Liam's wife's charity. The acknowledgement card mentioned the difficult hours of March 15th. When Patricia called to thank us, I put her on speakerphone while Chloe frantically gestured for me not to. "Your husband was so supportive during that exact time," I told her warmly, constantly messaging Chloe while we were in the hospital. The silence that followed was devastating. Patricia's voice chilled noticeably. Chloe left the room, retching. When she returned, eyes red, I was discussing charity board positions with Patricia. "She's invited us to their summer gala," I told Chloe after hanging up. "Isn't that nice?" Her face showed pure terror. She knew the walls were closing in. I remember feeling oddly detached watching her unravel, like observing a scientific experiment. My grief had transformed into something clinical and precise. 2 weeks later, I learned Patricia Franklin had hired a private investigator to look into Liam's communications. My anonymous package of time-stamped messages between Liam and Chloe had reached its target. The next evening, Chloe received an unexpected call from Liam. She took it in the bathroom again, but I'd long since bugged her favorite hiding spots. "She knows," Liam hissed. "Patricia knows everything." "How?" Chloe's voice cracked with panic. "Someone sent her proof, messages, dates, everything. Mark," she whispered. "Impossible. He'd have confronted you by now. This is something else." I smiled in the darkness of our bedroom. Liam underestimated me. Everyone did. The next morning, Patricia Franklin publicly announced her separation from Liam, citing irreconcilable breaches of trust. The story hit local business news. Liam's firm issued a statement of support, but investor confidence continued falling. Chloe grew increasingly frantic. Friends stopped returning calls. Invitations dried up. She clung to me, her last connection to normalcy. I remember thinking how strange it was to be someone's lifeline while simultaneously being their destroyer. The power was intoxicating. At Chloe's nonprofit, I made a substantial donation, earning a board observer seat. From this position, I could access records showing Chloe had used organization resources for personal meetings, many coinciding with Liam's schedule. Nothing explicitly damning, but enough to raise questions about professional ethics when presented properly. I suggested to the executive director that an audit of expense reports might be prudent given recent budget concerns. My business background made the suggestion seem helpful rather than targeted. Each move interlocked with the next. Social isolation, professional scrutiny, relationship pressure, the net tightening around both Chloe and Liam simultaneously. 3 months after our loss, I suggested a memorial service for closure. Chloe agreed desperately, seeing it as a chance to reconnect with friends who'd grown distant. It might help everyone heal, I said, stroking her hair as she leaned against me on the couch. Give us all a chance to come together again. She nodded eagerly, wiping away tears. I'll help plan it. No need, I assured her. I've got it. Handled. You focus on yourself. What she didn't know, I'd invited Liam's now separated wife, Patricia. The service was arranged at our church, intimate yet formal. I selected readings about loss, betrayal, and consequences. Photos of our son displayed prominently, all time-stamped. I remember watching Chloe prepare that morning, applying makeup to conceal dark circles under her eyes. She'd lost weight. Her hands trembled slightly as she fastened her necklace. You look beautiful, I told her, and meant it. Even falling apart, she was striking. She attempted a smile. Thank you for doing this, for being so strong through everything. I kissed her forehead. Of course, it's what family does. The word family made her flinch visibly. At the service, Chloe greeted guests with fragile composure. Then Patricia Franklin walked in, elegant in understated black. Chloe nearly collapsed, grabbing my arm for support. Why is she here? She whispered frantically. I invited her, I said simply. Her literacy foundation is establishing a scholarship in our son's name. Wasn't that thoughtful of her? The blood drained from Chloe's face. Across the room, Patricia's eyes locked with hers, cold and knowing. The moment crystallized everything. The careful groundwork of months culminating in one perfect, devastating scene. During the service, Patricia mentioned to another guest how strange it was that her husband was texting Chloe during their baby's final moments. The whisper was calculated, just loud enough for nearby mourners to hear. Expressions shifted. Glances darted toward Chloe. The final threads of her social support visibly disintegrated. After everyone left, Chloe broke. What are you doing? She screamed, shoving decorative flowers off a side table. I closed the church door, ensuring privacy for what came next. Exactly what you deserve. What are you talking about? Her voice, pitched higher, panic setting in. March 15th, 2:17 p.m. Our son's heart stopped beating. At 2:15, you sent a message to Liam. I can't do this anymore. After it's over, we need to talk about us. Her face crumpled. You knew? All this time? I saw everything, I said calmly. Every message, every lie, every moment you were with him instead of grieving our child. Mark, I can explain. Desperation made her voice crack. No need, I've had months to understand exactly who you are. I remember feeling strangely peaceful in that moment, the culmination of so much planning, the beginning of justice. I took out my phone, showing her the screen. A recording app running. Tell me again how you can explain texting your lover while our baby died. And Chloe, trapped and broken, began to talk. 3 months after our loss, I suggested a memorial service for closure. Chloe agreed desperately, seeing it as a chance to reconnect with friends who'd grown distant. What she didn't know, I'd invited Liam's now separated wife. The moment Patricia Franklin walked into the service, Chloe nearly collapsed. Even better was Patricia's sincere confusion when she mentioned to another guest how strange it was that her husband was texting Chloe during their baby's final moments. The whispers spread through the room like poison. After everyone left, Chloe broke. "What are you doing?" she screamed. I finally dropped my mask. "Exactly what you deserve." I lay out everything methodically, printouts of her messages against our son's heart monitor timestamps, her discussions about terminating the pregnancy, her plans to leave after the birth. I'd arranged everything chronologically, clinically, like evidence in a murder trial. "You weren't just unfaithful," I told her with terrifying calm. "You abandoned our dying child for him." Her face crumpled. "You knew? All this time?" "I saw everything," I said calmly. "Every message, every lie, every moment you were with him instead of grieving our child." I remember feeling strangely peaceful in that moment. The culmination of so much planning. The perfect pivot point where pretense became unnecessary. "Mark, I can explain." Desperation made her voice crack. "No need. I've had months to understand exactly who you are." I took out my phone, showing her the screen. A recording app running. "Tell me again how you can explain texting your lover while our baby died." Chloe collapsed onto a church pew, sobbing uncontrollably. Between gasps, her explanation tumbled out. A mess of excuses, self-pity, and blame-shifting. "I wasn't thinking clearly," she cried. "The pregnancy was so stressful. Liam understood me in ways you couldn't. I never meant to hurt anyone." Each word she spoke dug her grave deeper. Her plea of temporary insanity from grief was exactly what I needed, an admission. I recorded every word. "It was a mistake," she whispered. I was confused, trapped. "Can't you understand that?" "What I understand," I replied, "is that while our son's heart was stopping, you were planning your escape. While I was holding his body, you were texting your lover." She reached for me. I stepped back. Her hand hung in the air between us. I knew then that the performance was over. The months of pretending, gathering, waiting had culminated in this perfect moment of revelation. "What happens now?" she asked, voice small and broken. "Justice," I said simply. Looking back, I'm amazed at my composure. The old Mark would have raged, broken things, made a scene. The new Mark was ice-cold precision. That night, Chloe followed me home in silence. She tried once more, hand on my arm in our kitchen. "We can work through this," she pleaded. "I'll do anything, therapy, whatever you need." I looked at her hand until she removed it. "I'll sleep in the guest room," I told her. "We'll discuss practical matters tomorrow." Throw-away. Recording reached our entire social circle by morning. I sent carefully selected excerpts with a brief note. "I thought you should know who you've been supporting." Screenshots of messages accompanied the audio, time-stamped against hospital records. I'd redacted just enough to protect myself legally, while ensuring everyone understood what happened during our son's final heartbeats. My phone exploded with responses: shock, outrage, support for me, disgust for Chloe. When she came downstairs, her phone was already buzzing constantly, her face ashen as she realized what I'd done. "How could you?" she whispered. "I learned from the best," I replied. I remember thinking how satisfying it was to watch her social world implode in real time. Each notification another nail in the coffin of her carefully constructed persona. By afternoon, the professional consequences began. I'd presented evidence to the nonprofit board where I recently joined, evidence of Chloe using organization, resources to meet Liam. Not enough for criminal charges, but enough for termination. The email from HR arrived during dinner. Chloe stared at her phone, then at me. "You destroyed my career." "No," I replied calmly. "You did that when you violated ethical guidelines to meet your lover." She tried calling Liam repeatedly. His number had been disconnected. His firm under investigation, marriage destroyed. reputation in tatters. When Chloe emailed him, it bounced back with an automated response. No longer with the company. Watched her world collapse from every angle. Social, professional, financial. You calculated all of this, she said, newfound respect mixing with horror in her voice. Yes, while you were having your affair, I was paying attention. The apartment was next. I revealed I'd been paying the mortgage from my personal account all along. The lease reverted to me. You have 1 week to find new accommodations, I informed her coldly. The woman who had once been my wife, the mother of my lost child, sat across from me, utterly broken, her face hollow, her body diminished. Where am I supposed to go? She asked. The same place our son went, I replied. Into the void. I remember, marveling at my own capacity for cruelty. It had grown alongside my grief, fed by betrayal, watered with rage. That night, I could hear her crying through the walls. I felt nothing. The part of me capable of sympathy had died in that hospital room. The next morning I left for work early. When I returned, she was packing her personal items. Her sister would collect her, she said, the only person still willing to offer minimal support. I'll need more time for everything, she said, gesturing vaguely around our home. I've arranged for a moving service, I replied. They'll pack everything, your clothes, your jewelry, your mementos, all meticulously labeled and delivered to your sister's address. Her eyes widened. You've thought of everything. Yes, I agreed. I have. When she arrived to collect her belongings 3 days later, escorted by her increasingly distant sister, I'd arranged everything meticulously, her clothes in pristine boxes, her jewelry cleaned and organized. And in the nursery, nothing but the sage green walls and a single framed screenshot, her message to Liam sent at the exact moment our son's heart stopped beating. I watched from the doorway as she entered that room one last time, saw her knees buckle as she read the message in its clinical enlarged format. Why? She whispered, not turning around. Because cruelty deserves precision, I answered. Because while our child died, you were planning your future. This is your future now. Her sister, who had maintained frigid politeness until that moment, looked at the framed message, then at Chloe. Something final shifted in her expression. Let's go, she said flatly. I knew then that even this last connection was fracturing. The sister who had stood by Chloe through everything now saw the complete picture. As they left, I remained in the doorway of the nursery. The empty room that should have held our son. The sage green walls that Chloe had chosen because they represented hope. I touched the wall, feeling its smooth perfection. In this room, I had built a crib with my hands. In this room, I had imagined reading bedtime stories. In this room, I had transformed into someone capable of perfect, devastating revenge. And I regretted nothing. The recording reached our entire social circle by morning, along with carefully selected message screenshots. I'd redacted just enough to protect myself legally while ensuring everyone understood what happened during our son's final heartbeats. Professionally, Chloe crumbled when I presented evidence to the nonprofit board where I recently joined. Evidence of her using organization resources to meet Liam. Not enough for criminal charges, but enough for termination. Liam's life imploded simultaneously. His firm under investigation, marriage, destroyed, reputation in tatters. When Chloe reached out to him for support, he blocked her number, a final betrayal I hadn't even needed to engineer. She lost her apartment, our apartment, when I revealed I'd been paying the mortgage from my personal account all along. The lease reverted to me. When she arrived to collect her belongings, escorted by her increasingly distant sister, I'd arranged everything meticulously, her clothes in pristine boxes, her jewelry cleaned and organized, and in the nursery, nothing but the sage green walls and a single framed screenshot, her message to Liam sent at the exact moment our son's heart stopped beating. I remember wondering if this was enough, if the complete dismantling of her life balanced the scales against what she'd done. The answer came easily. Nothing could ever be enough. Over the following weeks, Chloe's destruction continued without my direct involvement. Former friends avoided her in public. Professional contacts disappeared. The whispers followed her everywhere. She found work as a retail clerk at a mall across town. I learned this through Sarah, who maintained contact with me out of pity and morbid curiosity. "She looks terrible," Sarah reported. "Lost at least 20 pounds, barely recognized her." I nodded, accepting this update with calm satisfaction. How unfortunate. I never mentioned to Sarah that I sometimes drove past that mall, that I occasionally watched from a distance as Chloe helped customers, her movements mechanical, her smile hollow. I remember feeling nothing during these observations. No satisfaction, no pity, just clinical assessment of results. Liam fared no better. The audit revealed significant irregularities in his firm's billing practices. Not enough for criminal charges. I'd been careful about that, but enough to destroy his professional credibility. He resigned under pressure. His investors filed civil suits. I tracked his downfall through business news sites, watched as his carefully constructed life collapsed completely. His wife's divorce settlement stripped him of assets. His social standing evaporated. The last I heard, he'd moved to Phoenix to work for his cousin's struggling real estate company. A catastrophic fall for someone once profiled in business magazines as a rising star. I never contacted him directly, never revealed my hand. Let him believe his downfall came from his own hubris and bad luck. 4 months after the memorial service, Chloe's sister called me. "She's in therapy," she said without preamble. "Twice weekly. She wants to meet with you." "For what purpose?" I asked. "An closure, apology, I don't know. She's trying to rebuild her life." I considered this, decided it might provide the final scene in our tragedy. "Tell her I'll meet her at Riverside Park, Saturday at noon." I remember preparing for this meeting with the same precision I'd applied to her destruction. Chose clothes that showed I was thriving. Selected a bench with clear sightlines in every direction. Arrived early to establish position. She appeared 5 minutes late, thinner than I remembered. Shadows under her eyes. Hair pulled back severely. Wearing clothes I didn't recognize, cheaper, less tailored than her former style. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting beside me, keeping careful distance. "What do you want, Chloe?" She took a deep breath. "To apologize, to explain, if you'll let me." "There's nothing to explain. Your actions were perfectly clear." "I was pregnant and terrified," she said, feeling trapped. Liam represented freedom, but it wasn't real. I see that now. I studied her, searching for manipulation, found only exhaustion and defeat. My therapist says I was having a breakdown, even before we lost the baby. That doesn't excuse what I did. Nothing could. But I need you to know I wasn't in my right mind. I laughed without humor. And that should matter to me. Why? It doesn't have to. I just needed to say it, to acknowledge what I did to you, to our child. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Once, they would have moved me. Now they were just salt water on skin. She reached into her bag, pulled out an envelope. I wrote everything down. Things I couldn't say face to face. If you ever want to read it. I took the envelope, tucked it into my jacket, had no intention of reading it. But taking it ended the interaction faster. "Is that all?" I asked. She nodded, wiping her tears. "Just one question. Did it help? Destroying me and Liam. Did it make anything better?" I considered this. The honest answer surprised me. It didn't bring our son back, but it prevented you both from simply walking away from what you did. There's value in that. She nodded again, stood to leave. "For what it's worth, Mark, I am sorry. Not just for getting caught, for all of it." I watched her walk away. Her shoulders slightly hunched, the spring gone from her step. I never saw her again after that day, but 6 months later, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "I thought you should know Chloe tried to kill herself last night. She's stable now. Thought you'd want to know." It was from her sister. I didn't respond. Deleted the message. I remember sitting in the nursery that night, still, painted sage green, the empty room a monument to everything lost and everything changed. The question echoed, did it help? The revenge had been perfect, meticulously planned, flawlessly executed. Both Chloe and Liam destroyed professionally, socially, financially, their betrayal exposed and punished with surgical precision. Yet I sat alone in an empty nursery, touching walls the color of hope. I sold the apartment 3 weeks later, moved across town, began dating casually, accepted a promotion, joined a gym, all the normal steps of moving on. But sometimes at night I'd wake with the hospital flatline echoing in my ears. In those moments I'd reach for my phone, scroll to the folder where I kept everything. The evidence, the recordings, the destruction I'd orchestrated. Not for comfort, not for satisfaction, but to remind myself of who I'd become, what I was capable of when pushed beyond breaking. I'd created the perfect revenge. But perfect revenge, I'd discovered, was its own prison. 6 months later, I run into Chloe at a grocery store. She's gaunt, aged years and months, working as a cashier after being blacklisted from her field. She tries to speak, but I walk past without acknowledgement. That night, she emails. A last, desperate plea explaining she's starting therapy, acknowledging her unconscionable actions, begging if not for forgiveness then for some closure. I read it twice before composing my response. For the first time I feel something crack in my calculated vengeance. Not regret, but recognition of what I've become. Something cold, precise, capable of destruction I never thought possible. I draft a single line. I hope you find peace. As I press send, I realize the truth. There is no satisfaction in her ruin that equals what we've lost. The revenge consumed me as completely as grief would have. I've become something else, not healed but transformed. I remember staring at my reflection afterward, wondering if I'd recognize myself a year ago. The man I'd been before the hospital, before the texts, before the cold clarity of betrayal rewired my brain. The next morning, I receive a notification. Liam Franklin has filed for personal bankruptcy. His legal fees from investor lawsuits drained his remaining assets. The final piece of his destruction complete, without any direct action from me. I close the news alert feeling nothing. The victory tastes like ash. 2 weeks later, Chloe's sister calls again. She overdosed last night. She's stable, but they're keeping her for observation. Why are you telling me this? I ask. Because she asked me to, and because you should know what you've done. I hang up without responding. Her accusation burns, as if I'd put the pills in Chloe's hand, as if her choices weren't her own from beginning to end. I tell myself this repeatedly as I pour a second glass of whiskey, then a third. I walk through my new apartment, purchased after selling our old place. Minimalist, modern, no green walls, no memories. But the memories follow anyway. I dream of the hospital room that night. But in the dream, I confront Chloe immediately, show her the phone, ask why, let the grief be shared, the betrayal acknowledged, let the healing begin, however, painful. I wake up sweating, disoriented by the possibility of a different path. Looking back, I wonder when revenge became more important than recovery. When destroying her became more essential than rebuilding myself. 6 weeks later, I see her again, not by accident this time. I go to the small cafe near her apartment deliberately, sit where she'll see me when she enters for her morning coffee. She looks better, still thin but less hollow. Her hair is different, shorter, practical. Her eyes meet mine, widen slightly in recognition, then dart away. I watch her order, hands trembling slightly as she pays. When she turns to leave, I nod once, an acknowledgement of her existence. Nothing more. But she stops at my table. May I? She asks, gesturing to the empty chair. I consider refusing. Consider maintaining the wall of ice I've built. Instead, I nod once. She sits, wrapping both hands around her coffee mug. I didn't expect to see you here. I know. She attempts a smile. It doesn't reach her eyes. How have you been? The ridiculous normality of the question almost makes me laugh. Surviving? I answer honestly. She nods. Me too. Just surviving. We sit in silence for several minutes. Not comfortable, not exactly uncomfortable either. Just existing in the same space without active hostility. I'm moving, she says finally. Seattle. My cousin found me a job there. I process this information. Her leaving feels both right and strangely destabilizing. When? Next week. I'm almost packed. Another silence. I read your letter, I lie. Truth is, I'd burned it unopened. She looks up, surprised. You did? Yes. I offer nothing more. Did it help? She asks, echoing my question from our last meeting. Nothing helps, I tell her honestly, but I understand better now. The lie feels kind in a way I haven't been capable of for months. I remember thinking how easy it would be to slip back into rage, to remind her of everything she destroyed, to ensure she leaves town feeling the full weight of her actions. But the impulse feels hollow now, performative rather than necessary. I'm sorry, she says again. I know it doesn't change anything. I know you'll never forgive me. I don't deserve that, but I am sorry for the texts, for betraying you, for not being there when our son needed me, for everything. I nod once, accepting the apology without offering absolution. Why did you do it? I ask. The question I never allowed her to answer during my campaign of destruction. She considers, carefully. I was terrified of motherhood, of being trapped. Liam represented freedom, options. It wasn't real, but I couldn't see that then. The simple truth of it hits harder than any elaborate explanation could have. Were you ever going to tell me about him? She looks down at her coffee. I don't know. I like to think I would have, but honestly, I was a coward then. Her admission hangs between us. Honest, ugly, real. I should go, she says, gathering her things. My shift starts soon. I nod. Watch her stand. Take care, Mark, she says softly. You too, Chloe. I sit there long after she's gone, wondering if this small interaction qualifies as closure, if anything ever could. 3 days later, I visit the cemetery for the first time since the funeral. Stand before the small headstone with our son's name, the date of his birth and death the same. I place a single blue flower on the grave. Not for Chloe, not for my revenge, for him, for what might have been. As I turn to leave, I see her standing at a distance, watching, waiting for me to go before approaching, giving me space. I walk past her without speaking, but I nod once. Permission to visit, to grieve, to exist in the same emotional space without my hatred following her to Seattle. That night, I finally opened the box of baby items we'd received. The things I couldn't bear to donate or throw away. Small onesies, tiny socks, a stuffed bear his grandmother had sent. I pack everything carefully. Address the box to Chloe's new apartment in Seattle. Include no note, no explanation needed, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement that our grief, like our loss, is shared, that she has the right to remember him too. I walk into the nursery one last time before the painters arrive, tomorrow. I touch the sage green wall, remembering how she'd said it was the color of hope. I realize I've become exactly what I needed to be to survive. The man who destroyed the woman who betrayed our child. But perhaps not the man I need to be to live whatever comes next. The painters will cover the green with neutral beige. The room will become an office. Life will continue its forward momentum. But for tonight, I sit on the floor of the empty nursery. Not to plan revenge, not to nurture rage, just to remember the future that never was, and to acknowledge the one that lies ahead. Different, broken, but possible. I touched the sage green wall one last time, remembering how she'd said it was the color of hope, and realize I've become exactly what I needed to be. The man who destroyed the woman who killed our child.